Once upon a time, there was a poor but honest girl named Mary McLaren. Mary worked in a 5 and 10 cent store in the days when you could use a nickel for something besides phone calls. It was in 1916 when the ladies still wore corsets and put themselves out to keep themselves in. Those were the days when the gals bought millinery by the pound and skirts by the acre. She needed new bootsies for her tootsies. But alas, shoes came high in those days. In fact, they came halfway up the calf, and that was no bull. Aha, whom have we here? Why, it's desperate Desmond himself, a villain who would take a girl's all and then come back for more. Our little Mary resented his gloating glances, but Mary's pal Nell had heard that there wasn't any Santa Claus, and she knew a good thing when she saw it, a good old-fashioned pickup, freewheeling, floating power, and everything. The vulture could not understand Mary's indifference, but his best friends wouldn't tell him. Poor Mary lived in poverty on the 3rd floor of a 2-story house. While Mary slaved, her father spent his days reading Ballyhoo and Hooey. He had a weak stomach, and his only drink was wild moose milk. Mary thought her old man was the nurse. Her old lady was shrinking away to a perfect 44. Mary was her mother's only support, and even she was getting weak in the kishkas. Mother says she hates to take that much money from Mary, but if that's all Mary earns, what can she do? And so the old lady unbosoms herself and deposits the money in the old Fourth National Bank. Mother tells Mary that they've either got to cancel their debts or have a moratorium. But, says Mary, how about my shoes? Never mind, says Mother. Prosperity's just around the corner. She reminds the gal that there are 7 days in a week, and somebody should do something about it. Ma shows that you can't get blood out of a stone. And so between them, Mary and her mother had the hoof and mouth disease. Mary went away, leaving her mother on the range. Mary had 3 sisters, and both of them were always hungry. Mother tried to vary the meals. One night it was corned beef and cabbage. The next night it was the same. Mother always called Father to meals because they couldn't afford a dinner gong. The old man propped his book up against the sugar bowl. Just an old literary custom. Mother could dish it out, and Father could take it. Oh, how she loathed her father's taste in books. The girl suddenly discovered that she had left her appetite in her room. The dawn came up like thunder out of Jersey across the bay. Morning found Mary still unable to keep her feet out of her mind. The poor dear was so ashamed of her shoes that she entered through the floor. Mary thought the shoes would last longer if she stood on 1 foot at a time. It was getting so there was more lumber in Mary's feet than on the floor. Nell was trying to lure Mary off the straight and narrow path that leads to flat feet. Nell told Mary that desperate Desmond was a butter and egg man willing to be scrambled. Listen, pal, says Nell, I used to be an apsay like you till I got hep to myself, and now I'm declaring regular dividends. It's the vulture, back for no good reason. Nell saw the vulture approaching, and her heart did a Notre Dame shift. Here we see the hellish technique of the villain. And so he tries to give Mary the business. But business is bad all over the country. The vulture asked Nell if she couldn't put in a good word for him. But Nell said she couldn't because she didn't know any good words. So the vulture tips his hat, tucks in his wings, and flits away. Mary's only relief was good old-fashioned aspirin foot baths. She had her own formula, cold water mixed with hot, and hot water mixed with cold. She always tried to have the water lukewarm in memory of her Uncle Luke. Meanwhile, at the Blue Goose Cafe, where the latest song hits were Mother McCree and Pony Boy. Here it was that the vulture sang in a quartet called the Asthma Boys. Also, we might remark that in his idle moments he sang over the radio on the Lucky Cough Drop Hour. In those days, the real mammy singers were still in Russia. Little Nell spent many happy hours in the Blue Goose because she loved music. She sang a little herself and loved to take the high notes, especially the 50s and 100s. The vulture looked on Nell as just another poor fish who needed his line. He tells Nell that if she's thirsty, she's welcome to have a drink. In fact, he says she can have as many drinks as she can pay for. But poor Mary had to do her cutting up at home. All night long, the neighbors could hear her skizzers going snip, snip. In Mary's inmost soul, she felt like a heel. Next day, the weather was unusually clear for that time of the month. She was wearing out the buildings along the street from leaning on them so much. However, she still managed to keep her feet on the ground. Suddenly she felt something coming on, something she ate, no doubt. Nell tried her best to cheer Mary up. She told her that the good die young, and that if Mary died, she'd have to be buried in her old shoes. Wednesday and Thursday, it continued to rain. Friday and Saturday, it poured. There they were, poor shoes. She knew them by heart. Back home, broke, without even the wages of sin. Mother says that they couldn't get any meat for dinner, so she tried to cook up a little fudge. Poor Dad comes in, saying the benches in the park are getting harder every day. He says there are 82 million men out of work, and soon Congress is going to make it unanimous. Mary says that what this country needs is a good 5-cent brassiere. Father tells Mary to go right to her room and wash her mouth out with gin. As time went on, Mary got deeper and deeper into hot water. She lay awake every night, thinking of the future that lay behind her. This scene shrieks for itself. The next morning found Mary with her neck in splints. "Listen, pal," says Nell, "which would you rather have, a watch like this on your wrist or a pain in the neck?" That timepiece of Nell's never came from the 5 and 10, not when the dollar store is around the corner. Mary had a very bad habit of getting hungry at lunchtime. She always ate lunch in the park with the birds and the bees and the bums. She admired the fine feathers on the other chickens, but they knew their roosters. Why had cruel fortune denied her those new Paris pretties? Why did other girls have the new Rolls Royces? How she longed to dash away in the gas buggy and open it up to 12 miles an hour. Mother always spent hours packing and planning Mary's lunch. A dainty morsel, if you had a meat grinder handy. The gentlemen are afraid that Mary might offer them a bite. It was a delicate problem. Should she go hungry or risk losing her teeth? All she had to do now was to lose her teeth, and she'd be in bad condition at both ends. If she had only been born a vegetarian. Suddenly she passes a crisis. Curfew shall not ring tonight. Mary tells Dad she's got to have new shoe leather or she'll take it out of his hide. Father looks at Mary's shoes, thinking he might borrow them. He offers to match shoes with Mary at 2 bits a size. After all, she's only walking in her father's footsteps. Besides, summer will be here soon, and then she can go barefoot. Mary decides to act. Maybe she's going to bob her hair for spite. Mother just loves the sound of combing hair. She thought that if her hair was well done, people wouldn't look at her shoes. What's the shirtwaist between friends? She feels strictly dishonorable. Putting on the Ritz. Should she should, or shouldn't she shouldn't? The Blue Goose was featuring the Whooping Cough Sisters. You had to cough up or they didn't whoop. Aren't they the wicked cut-ups, the shameless hussies? She must act. It's only a matter of minutes until the shoes fall to pieces. And so into the Blue Goose comes the chicken to talk turkey. The vulture feels like a spider who sees a fly walking into his office. Here we see the Culbertson approach system. The vulture had very touching ways. He is very generous and offers to give Mary singing lessons. But Mary says she doesn't want to sing. She wants to play the saxophone. And so time lapsed and lapsed and lapsed. Well, well, I wonder what's become of Mary. And that's how Mary learned to play the saxophone.